Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of the Game Vault podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and tonight we have the Dream Team together for a very special podcast, especially when we get to our Retro Roulette game. So, without further ado, Tom, Jen, how are you guys doing?
Doing pretty well. Happy it's Friday.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Friday, as they say.
Friday, that's right.
Yeah, this was one of those Fridays I was looking forward to for a while. Not so much for, being the end of the week, but because you've already would have seen this when this podcast goes up, but is the day before our final of the 2-part extra live stream, and I'm doing, most of the virtual stuff. So at this point, I would have gotten about 5 to 6 hours in of Super Mario RPG. So those starts will be next podcast. But yeah, so you guys know what I'll be playing mostly Saturday. Let's start with Jen on what he's been playing, because I know Tom has a very special announcement for what he's been playing. So Go ahead, Jen.
Sure. So honestly, the usual games, you're not going to be surprised by any of this. Dead by Daylight, I finally got back into that after like 8 weeks or something crazy. Yeah. They have released a few changes since I was on break from the podcast. I'm not going to go through them all, but the anti-face camping mechanic is in there, and got to experience that. A killer was standing way too close to the hook when I was hooked, and I saw the little timer going down or going up, and as soon as it hits max on the bar, you get to unhook yourself. So I didn't get to that point, unfortunately, but I thought that was pretty cool to see that in action finally. And they announced the newest licensed killer is going to be Chucky.
That's a big nope for me. Yeah.
I have heard he seems a bit overpowered, but he looks funny as hell chasing survivors. To me, he doesn't freak me out, but I know a lot of people are freaked out by Chucky and dolls. So I'm looking forward to experiencing Chucky. Tiffany will also be in the game. I think she'll just be like an alternate skin for him, but yeah, so more to come on that. I'm sure in the next couple of weeks he's going to drop.
I didn't even think of the doll factor with Chucky.
Yeah. For me, those movies never freaked me out, but I have a very good friend who is terrified of dolls. Like, she has a irrational fear of dolls. That's how she puts it.
Yeah, I was thinking more porcelain doll with Annabelle type deal than Chucky, but I guess they would work on the same fear.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I could see it. But aside from Dead by Daylight, I've been playing Phasmo, post big update. So grinding to try to get better equipment has been very difficult, but fun. It's kind of bringing not only difficulty back to the game, but the ghosts are smarter and it's a little bit scarier now. So I've been enjoying that as well. 7 Days to Die. I still have a subs only server over on my own Twitch channel. So just playing around with that. Minecraft, I got back into the Tech It 2 mod, which I've never played. You can go to the moon. I built a quarry. You could do alchemy. It's kind of ridiculously complicated, but it's bringing my interest back because I'm learning new things. It's not just like the same old song and dance in Minecraft. So I will not learn how to do all of it, but I am learning things as I go. So it's been interesting as well.
You'll learn at the pace of an old, right?
Oh yeah, I feel like someone that just sat down at the computer for the first time, and I'm like, all right, so how does this thing work? But I have a couple people in there with me who have been tutoring me pretty much, so that's going, but it's fun. I played a little bit of Mortuary Assistant, which is like my Halloween tradition on my channel, and that was terrifying as always. Yeah. I picked the wrong body, so we got to experience an alternate ending, which I totally did on purpose.
Yep. It's always what happens when you screw up in games. Did it on purpose, so you guys
did it on purpose. You're welcome. And then lastly, I've been playing the new Ark game called Ark Survival Ascended. It's basically a remastered version of Ark. I forget, it's Ark Survival something, but the original one looks like garbage now compared to Ascended. So like super updated graphics. It's poorly optimized at this point because it just came out a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. But it's been fun. I really like playing that game starting over as a new player because it's so difficult, but in a really fun way when you're playing with friends. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing.
So we'll switch over to me, just so Tom can get his full amount of time with the game that he wants to discuss. So me, as Jen said, same old song and dance so far because I'm trying to finish Starfield. I think I got like 2 missions left. I got to the twist in the game and the big reveal, and now I'm just driving towards the end.
Nice.
So I should be done next time I play. And then played a little bit more Sea of Stars. Still loving that game. I think in my way too soon list before I played everything that I want to play, that game is in the top 3 for sure, possibly number 1. And so I look forward to finishing it. And then playing some of the sports games as I watch some streams, which is when I was watching Mortuary Assistant. Along that time. But I think what I'm most looking forward to is having a couple of days off next week, or this week, I guess, because this is listing on Monday, just to get deep into Super Mario RPG and also possibly purchase Alan Wake 2 and start playing that after I finish Starfield.
Nice.
Because that's really of my list of games I put. I had my way too early top 10 that I sent you guys. That's really Alan Wake 2 and possibly like Oxenfree, or I probably won't get Spider-Man this year. But, to make it a full 10, I have to play at least one of the 4 games I have question marked here for the year. Or possibly 2 of them, just so I don't have to put City Skylines 2 on the top 10.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm excited for what's to come more than what I've been playing, just because it's that time of year where we'll get to discuss that stuff, and I've been reminded of some games I loved, and made some tough decisions there. But one of the things I can't wait for is to see Tom play Sea of Stars if he's going to play it, or at least get the feedback from it.
I am going to play it, Mark. Not to worry.
Yeah. I won't be upset if you don't like it. I just think it's something, since it's free on Game Pass, you should at least experience. So without further ado, Tom, you did something that you haven't done in a while.
I absolutely did. I beat a game.
Ooh, nice.
I beat Super Mario Wonder. I was not expecting to get through it as fast as I did, but what a freaking ride Super Mario Wonder is. If you guys absolutely have to play this game, just for the mere absurdity of it all. It's so good. This is definitely in Game of the Year contention for me. I'm not going to spoil anything, but once you get to the last like 2 or 3 levels, let's just say you have to have rhythm to be able to play to beat those levels.
Awesome.
Oh,
those levels are going to suck for me.
That's all I'm going to say. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. But
maybe I should play those games streaming through the computer, since apparently I'm good with rhythm games when it's delayed, like Hi-Fi Rush.
There you go.
I mean, at the beginning it was a little like there's some stuff where you get badges throughout this thing, and the badges give you like an extra ability. It's kind of like Mega Man, where it gives you a little, like you can get a super jump, or you can get your hat can inflate and be like a balloon and you can float, or you can have a triple jump. Like there's a bunch of different things that you can do. But towards the end of the game, you actually have to start using them. Like for most of the game, I only used one. I didn't use anything else.
Power.
There's actually like an auto super mushroom, like an auto. It gives you.
Okay. I didn't see that one.
Out of the gate, that one it'll give. That's the one I used most of the game. But towards the end of the game, you actually just have to start using them, because you literally can't get past parts without using the right one. So I had like 35 lives going into the last world. I ended with like 15. So, and it was mostly on like the last 2 levels that I had the most trouble, because they have star ratings also on the levels.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
and the last 2 are like 5-star levels.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's been a long time since I've beaten a 2D Mario game. I think the last one I beat is probably World. I don't think I beat Wii. I don't think I beat any of the newer ones, but it was satisfying to beat this game.
By the way, before I jump in with something,
yeah,
how old does it make you feel that Tom said I didn't beat the Wii one or the newer ones?
Yeah. And it also shows you how many there are in general.
A console that came out in 2006. The game is not considered under the umbrella of newer games, and he's absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it puts it in it definitely puts it in perspective. I saw somebody say like they were watching Gilmore Girls and they mentioned the Xbox 360, and I was like, God, that thing is almost 20 years old.
Yeah,
they're like the new Xbox 360, and I was like, that's
I hope it wasn't being played by the worst character in TV history, Rory Gilmore.
No, it was our main man Logan.
Okay,
we got it.
Yeah, so the thing I want so good Gilmore Girls talk on the Game Ball Pod.
Who knew?
You don't know what you'll get here. Tom, the one question: have you played any of the bonus stuff yet?
I have not. Okay. Which bonus stuff do you mean?
There's stuff I don't know. I don't know if it's because I was watching Kyle Bossman stream it.
Yeah.
And there was one level he went into, which was like an endurance test thing, where it was all of the badges, like each of the sections was a different badge. And,
that's interesting.
And you go so far after so many badges, and then you would get a checkpoint. But if you failed anywhere in between, you went all the way back to either the beginning or the checkpoint.
Okay, I haven't seen that one. I've seen. Yeah. There's definitely like there's badge like trials.
Yeah,
which I've done a good number of those throughout the game. I did not go like 100% run on this.
Yeah. I wonder if the thing I'm thinking of appears after you beat all those trials.
Probably
as like a final trial.
Because there was specifically one trial where I was like, "Fuck this! I'm done."
Yeah.
It was. I forget which one it was. It was like a wall jumping one, and I was just not having a good time with it. And I was like, I want to like play through this and enjoy it. And this one level is really pissing me off. So I'm gonna leave this one. Maybe I'll come back to it. Maybe I won't. But I did not go back to it. So I did not beat all of the trials. I beat most of them, but I didn't beat all of them.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff that pops up is, and this isn't spoilers for anything. It's like sort of like go to this level to collect a lot of coins, or special coin level,
Yeah, there's like break levels they call them.
Yeah.
So it's basically just go and get a bunch of power ups. Yeah. Or go and get a bunch of coins, or go and get a bunch of flower coins.
Yeah. So, and it's all the little like weird LSD worlds are amazing from what I've seen.
So good. It's so there's such weird stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Like there's one in particular that stands out in my mind, and you get the Wonder Flower, and all of a sudden it turns like to shadow mode, like kind of like what Inside looks like.
Yeah.
Was it Inside? Yeah, where it's like you're just seeing shadows, like it's all black. But Mario is like his whole middle of his body stretches, and he's like super tall. So
weird Mario.
It's so weird. It's hard to describe. You have to see it.
Yeah.
But it's there's just so much weird crap that happens in this game. It's so good.
I am glad that you did finish it. It shows how good of a game that was, that you, with the limited time you have, being a father and working, a full-time job, that you did play through this game fairly quickly.
I did.
With how, just shows you how good it is.
Yeah, for sure. It took way less time than like Final Fantasy 16 did.
Yeah.
But I think that is going to happen. But I did put I would say I put a good 20 hours into this.
Yeah, I would say your average for a game like this, if you're just mainlining, would probably be 10 to 12.
Yeah.
And then 20 if you're doing the sides or you're struggling on certain levels. But yeah. And also you didn't get to the last world and then 20 side quests popped up.
No.
either.
You mean every side quest in the game popped up at the last minute?
16. That's one of the memories going back to it as I've been thinking. That's been having it slowly creep down the list as time has gotten away. I'm like, oh yeah, that wasn't great.
I mean, I understand why they did it, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Especially for people who like wanted to do all the side quests.
Yeah. Yep. And from what I saw, I won't spoil it for anyone. The end credits thing looks pretty fucking cool for Wonder, what they do.
Yes, it was very cool. I enjoyed the end credits.
Yeah, so,
but yeah, you guys need to go get it and play it, so we can talk shop.
Sure.
Yeah. So real quick, there was one new game that the two of us played, Tom, that I'd forgotten about because it was during Extra Life. WarioWare Move It.
Oh, that's right. We did play WarioWare Move It.
I love that game.
By far the weirdest. Like I was saying, Mario Wonder was weird. This game is like times 100. It's like by far the weirdest game I've ever played in my entire life.
I can't wait for next Extra Life or sometime in the next multiples of months here when Jen will be able to play that.
Yep.
Game, because I feel like Dan had a good time with it, so I feel you would like it.
Yeah, he did find it interesting, I think. So
yeah, and he's very picky about his games, so I'm confident that you'll like it. But yes, and speaking of Extra Life, before we move on to the news, as I mentioned, we are raising money for Extra Life. You can still donate to the end of the year, even though our 2 main sessions are over. You can go to tinyurl.com/GVP Extra Life. That's GVP as in Game Vault Pod Extra Life. And like I said, you can donate to the end of the year. We might be doing spot streams here and there. We'll always have the, or at least I will have the Extra Life, background up for the stuff when I stream. I'm sure we'll have it on the Retro Roulettes through the end of the year. Except for 1 week, obviously around Christmas, we'll put Jen's beautiful Christmas layout that I love to do with the twinkling lights and all that.
Yeah, we could still have the little banner with the timer and the donation amount up, so everyone knows where we're at.
Yeah. So, so feel free to donate there, and hopefully by the time you hear this, we have surpassed the $750 goal. If not, we got to the end of the year. But thank you for everybody that did donate over the 2 weekends here. We truly do appreciate it. You guys are way too kind to us. Hit us up on Twitter if you want to see me do any kind of short marathon stream for a certain game or something, that we could run, if anybody wants to see that. So Jen, why don't we move on to the news?
Sure. So we have a couple stories to go over. First up, I'm interested to get both of your opinions on this. We just found out Nintendo is teaming up with Arad Productions Incorporated and announced that they are going to develop a live-action Legend of Zelda movie. Personally, I don't know how I feel about this, but I'll give everyone listening as much of information as we know at this point, which isn't a lot. And then I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. But starting out, Shigeru Miyamoto, who is the creator of Zelda, he will be taking on a producer role for the movie, which is definitely a good sign. And he will also be joined by another producer, Avi Arad, who obviously the studio is named after. He in the past has produced films including Spider-Man 2 from 2004, Iron Man from 2008, and 2023's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. He's apparently also worked on a few video game adaptations as well, including Uncharted and Borderlands, which is supposed to come out sometime next year. So that's probably a good sign that both of them are going to be working on it. And then as far as director goes, Wes Ball will be directing, and he's done the Maze Runner movies in the past, as well as Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So pretty much at this time, no further information is available. Like, we don't have a cast yet or anything like that. So personally, I kind of wish they would have just left The Legend of Zelda alone. Like, I don't want to see this bomb, and that's my main reason why. And obviously that's not guaranteed, but this is the fate of a lot of different video game adaptations. Yeah. So I'd like to know what you guys think about this.
I will tell you my first and pretty much only issue with this.
Sure.
Link is a silent protagonist.
True.
How do you translate that to a movie? That's my biggest gripe with this is that how do you make Link talk? He's talked in, unless you so you could go one of two ways. You can make it super serious, or you could play off of that Zelda cartoon that we had.
Well, excuse me, princess.
Exactly. You either go one way, like super out there that way, or you go super serious and he never actually speaks.
Sure.
And he's the quiet man.
Yeah.
Mark, I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, so that's really one of the issues, but at this point, I'm not some kind of like gatekeeper, obviously, because I'm not Shigeru Miyamoto, to what they do with The Legend of Zelda. But obviously the character is called Link because he's the link between the player and the game, and all that stuff that's been rehashed a whole bunch. It's the main reason he got to rename the character and all that. So you could get around the silent protagonist in a cartoon, theoretically, but live action will be a little bit tougher. I think the one thing is I would like them to go with a completely new story instead of trying to adapt one of the games.
I think that's a good idea.
Because you'll have a lot of the bad super fans, not myself, that will pick apart every single little thing that was wrong if it's an Ocarina of Time remake, which I don't think, to be honest, if they're going to do one of the games, it has to be Breath of the Wild, or one of the games where Link stays the same age throughout the whole game.
Yeah.
Or if they go, they could go, like I can say, they could go the super other direction, do Link to the Past and have it be wild.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that it eliminates Ocarina, probably eliminates Majora's Mask because you need to know Ocarina to kind of, maybe you could figure out how to.
Yeah, I don't know that they'd go that path. But
yeah, those two are eliminated. Wind Waker's too weird for live action. For a cartoon, Wind Waker would be perfect. The only other choice is Skyward Sword, just because that's technically the first game in the timeline.
I know you would hate that.
I would.
But they would probably go Skyward Sword.
Yeah, It's either they go, if they want to do canonically or whatever the storytelling, they would probably go Skyward Sword because it's the best way to introduce it. Even though live action would be kind of weird with all the things that entails. But I really think what they would do if they're going to adapt the game, and it's because Breath of the Wild is really the easiest to translate to film. Just the storyline and all behind it. The other ones are a lot more reading the text and not so much in the game, meaning like the first two. And Link to the Past obviously has its things that would be weird about it. But yeah, essentially, I think it needs to be a whole new story because Breath of the Wild is the only one that really fits, and that's way too open world to do anything. But I'll be fine with the movie as long as they keep the 4 races that are in Zelda, which are bird people, rock people, fish people, and women.
Yep, that's right.
So as long as they keep that in there, I'll be absolutely fine. I would be interested to see how much on the fantasy route it goes, like how high or low fantasy, in the sense that does Link have a little fairy with him,
right?
Or not? How much magic is actually in the game, because in a couple of the games, it's like only a couple items are magic. And so it can be a very low fantasy game or movie. But yeah, I'll trust, as much as the Super Mario Brothers movie wasn't, some epic, movie of the generation type deal. I trust with Miyamoto being a producer on that, that he kept a lot of it true to what the game was about while telling a new story there. It's just the live action part is what confuses me because they could have just done the cartoon route. Like I was really hoping for a Smash Brothers cinematic universe.
That would be cool.
Where they would do all these side movies and then they all come together for Smash Brothers.
Yeah, that's funny.
But Yeah, because you already introduced a Smash Brothers course in the Super Mario Brothers movie. Where Mario fights Donkey Kong.
That's right.
No,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
But yeah, that's the only thing I'm slightly upset about. But yeah, as a Zelda super fan, obviously I talked a little long on this, but
that's okay.
Yeah. I think I trust that Miyamoto's there.
That makes me feel confident. At least that'll be decent.
Makes me feel that they won't take too many liberties.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm sure as soon as we have substantial information, specifically cast and all that, we'll be talking about it more.
You mean Chris Pratt as Link?
Yeah. Actually, that would be kind of fun as a future topic. Like picking our dream cast for
we should
Zelda
definitely hold on to that one.
Coming soon. But moving on for now, CD Projekt Red has announced that they are working on a mod editor for The Witcher 3, and it will be available for PC sometime next year, and it's going to be free, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
So this is relatively new news as well. They just tweeted this out on November 15th. So their tweet is, and I quote, "We're thrilled to announce that we are working on a mod editor for The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It will allow you to create your own experiences in the game by making something completely new or editing existing quests and content. We're planning on releasing it for free in 2024. Stay tuned. We'll have more to share next year." So that's kind of cool. I mean, basically this mod editor is going to allow players to create their own in-game experiences. So you could choose your own adventure essentially. But bad news, if you're a console only player, it is going to only be for PC. A bunch of people were asking, I guess, under the tweet about that, and they did confirm this is a PC only mod editor. But again, no information on this really aside from that yet.
Are there mods in the console version?
I don't know. It's been so long since I've played it on console. I don't know. And if there is, I probably don't know about it. Like I didn't know about it when I played, but
I don't know how that would work. I mean, I think they got it working in Skyrim, but I don't know how it would work in The Witcher.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's pretty cool that you can change your own experiences and stuff. That game is refusing to go away, which is hilarious. Moving on to a pretty big topic we cover every year, and that is the Game Awards, which time is flying because it is rapidly approaching.
Yeah, I gotta get ready for my shirt.
That's right. So I figured we could put in a little reminder here for everyone, a little pre-announcement that, as always, we'll be covering this live on Twitch, hopefully. But the Game Awards is going to be airing on December 7th this year at 7:30 Eastern Time, and hosted by Jeff Keighley, as always. So as we all know, there's a huge, long, full list of categories and nominees, and I am not about to go through all of them because that would take me over a half hour at least. But I did want to mention the few Game of the Year nominations, and if anyone also listening wants to get involved with the voting, it's actually open now for fans to participate in over at the Game Awards website. So that's pretty cool.
Can we win a Steam Deck is the real question.
That's right. So the Game of the Year nominations are Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, none of these are surprising, by the way, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So it'll be interesting, I guess, to see which game wins.
It might be a controversial point to make here, but I actually think that RE4 might be the weakest link in that.
I don't. Here's my issue with it. They did not put Final Fantasy 16 on it, which I know it's a game that some people really like, some people don't like. But Resident Evil 4 is like the same game. It's an up-res version of Resident Evil 4. Why did you have that on instead of Final Fantasy 16?
I'm kind of surprised that Alan Wake 2 is on there, to be honest.
The critics make these nominee lists, and that was a critic darling when it came out. So I'm not shocked that it's there.
Is it out? Is Alan Wake 2 out?
Yep, it's out recently, fairly recently, I think. Yeah,
that was an October release.
Yeah.
Okay,
but critics love that, and I heard even from non-critics that it's really, really good. So, not surprised there. I'm just surprised they didn't. I don't know, the RE4 remake, while probably really good, I played through most of it. I don't know. I felt that there was probably another game, even like indie level game, that you could have put up there.
Yeah. It's weird to me that it's a straight remake. It's not like it's Final Fantasy VII remake. And not only that, it's like the third time it's been remade, right? Isn't there already
there was a remaster? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a remaster. There are things that are slightly different in this as someone that played both, but my point is that it didn't crack high on my list playing it. There's even like, games like Lies of P and, things like that probably deserved it, but we can have this discussion game of the year stream, but that's just the, first thing that, popped off. It just felt like critics had to put a certain amount of games and, just put a game they remembered,
Yeah, that was definitely the outlier to me. I agree.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Again, more to come on this in a few weeks, which is crazy.
Yeah, which means it'll win, Tom. But
right.
I'm sure. I'm sure it'll win.
Yeah. We'll see.
If Alan Wake does not win, it will be RE4.
All right. So last news topic for me. Valve has announced that we will be getting the first upgraded version of the Steam Deck, which is going to be called the Steam Deck OLED. So pretty simple name there. And as of us recording this right now, it is actually already available for purchase because it released on November 16th. So basically, this improved Steam Deck is going to have, as the name alludes to, an HDR OLED screen, which will make the colors more vibrant. It's also going to have a larger battery, which they're saying should give users anywhere from 30% to 50% more battery life, depending on the game being played. And then the OLED screen itself also uses less battery power as well, which helps, improve the battery life overall. They're also saying it's going to feature an updated and more efficient AMD APU and Wi-Fi 6E. So Valve is saying that this should result in download times up to 3 times faster because there's going to be increased bandwidth and lower latency. And then lastly, it's supposed to run cooler as well because it has a bigger fan and improved thermals, and it's 5% lighter than the original Steam Deck. So some pretty decent improvements here. I have
to say, these were like all of the things that I wanted in the original Steam.
I was just going to say, I know you had mentioned that you were glad that you didn't get the original Steam Deck because these are all things that we wanted to see the first time around.
Absolutely.
So, yes. I mean, I wouldn't have been mad if I won it last year at the Game Awards, but
oh yeah,
I'm glad that
I would have taken a free one. Let's be honest. But seeing all of these things makes me go, man. Mm-hmm. Do I need a Steam Deck?
Right now, now it's getting to us, I think. So my favorite thing, jumping ahead a little bit from my notes, my favorite thing are the storage options, because if you remember, the original Steam Deck starts out pretty small and the beefiest storage options, not that great still.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're looking at some much larger storage options here too, which I love.
And you can still upgrade it, which is
exactly
awesome.
Yes. So overall, there's going to be 3 versions purchasable, or actually there are 3 versions purchasable. So the basic specs, it's going to have a 1280 by 800 HDR OLED display. It's going to have a 7.4-inch diagonal display size. As I said earlier, a 6nm APU and Wi-Fi 6E, a 50 watt-hour battery, which is about 3 to 12 hours of gameplay, depending on the game again. And then a 45 watt power supply with a little bit less than a 3-foot cable that it's going to come with. Now, the 3 different storage options. The first one is the lowest, the 512 gigs, which the original Steam Deck, that was the highest that you could get. Mm-hmm. So this is the lowest. It's going to be, or it is $549. And aside from the specs I mentioned, it'll also come with a carrying case and a Steam profile bundle. The next tier up is a 1 terabyte for $649. And aside from the carrying case and the Steam bundle, it will also give users an exclusive startup movie and exclusive virtual keyboard theme, which I think that's kind of lame, but whatever. And then
it comes with a case, doesn't it?
It does, yes. It just comes with the same case as the 512 gig does, unless it's slightly different. They didn't say.
Well, I think this one also has an anti-glare screen.
So
That's the other big thing.
That's good. That's nice that there's something else included in there. Because the third tier is still 1 terabyte, but they're calling it the limited edition 1 terabyte. This one's only available to the US and Canada, and it's selling for $679.
Fuck it, rest of the world.
Yes. And this one will have an anti-glare etched glass screen, and also a limited edition carrying case with a removable printed liner. So that was a very specific thing that they mentioned. So I don't know. Maybe someone's like, oh my God, that's it. I'm doing it for those reasons. But yeah.
I thought it would have day one inscribed on it.
Well,
or
it
whatever,
is
or whatever's on your Xbox One controllers.
It is a different color. It does have it's like a see-through. It's smoked. It's got a smoked case instead of a standard black case, and it's got like red joysticks. So it does look a little different. It's not just good. Like, oh, they said it's limited edition and that's it.
Right. So yeah. Interestingly, now that this new version has launched, the Steam Deck OLED is now the default Steam Deck moving forward. So Valve is currently phasing out the original LCD models, but you can still get your hands on one if you want. And they've been discounted in price, which is nice. So it will now cost $349 for the 64 gig, $399 for the 256 gig, and $499 for the 512 gig. So if anyone out there is still dying for the original LCD model, you can still purchase them.
And it's cheap.
And it's cheaper, which is amazing. Like almost $200 cheaper for the biggest, the 512 gig one. So yeah, but that's all I have on my end for news.
All right, and speaking of the Steam Deck, that'll lead us into our main topic, and we're talking about handheld games here, and we have a special guest joining us. Jonathan, say hello to the audience.
Hello, I am here as a handheld aficionado, and also to tag in for Jen to literally save her ass.
Yeah. Yes.
So she can't sit down for too long. For people who haven't heard her say that on their streams. Anyway.
Yes. Yeah. So Jen taking a little break here in the podcast between the news and Retro Roulette. Let her take a little breather, tag out, just so us three guys here can discuss handheld games. And Tom, why don't you introduce your, genesis for this topic and, what we'll be discussing.
Sure. So recently we've seen a deluge of handheld PCs come out following the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch also. And it just has brought to light that, man, handheld gaming is back with a vengeance. And there was a time when handheld gaming really wasn't as popular as it is now. But I like to call this the rise, fall, and rise again of handheld gaming. I think we've gone through ups and downs in handheld stuff, and I just wanted to talk about it. I would like to start at the beginning. I mean, the Game Boy was a juggernaut. There was nothing that could touch the Game Boy, and everybody had one. Grandparents had them, kids had them, teachers had them. I mean, anybody you could think of had a Game Boy, and there was a game for them. Tetris was loved by everybody.
Yeah.
And it being a pack-in game with the Game Boy, people kind of just bought it for Tetris, and that was it. There was their Tetris machine.
Yeah, it was the original Wii Sports.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, they included a Mario game because they thought, man, this is a Nintendo system. It should have a Mario game. But originally, the Tetris was the killer app for the Game Boy, and it definitely showed. The Game Boy is the most still one of the most popular systems of all time for including Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Pocket, which essentially they're all the same thing.
I think that's cheating because
there's
definitely a lot of people who bought a Game Boy Color.
I agree it's kind of cheating, but they all play the same. They're all based on the same hardware, even though the Game Boy Color is a little more powerful.
To me, they're different because there were a lot of games that were exclusive to the Game Boy Color. And so there were a lot of people who would have bought a Game Boy Color as a new version of the Game Boy, not just.
Yeah, I would agree in the sense that if there's exclusives, then you can kind of separate them. And especially with there being whole new hardware, I guess you get into a little discussion with whether that theory that I just put out there is true when you start talking about the 32X and stuff like that. But yeah, at least in the handheld world, that's how I would dictate it. Yeah, so I had Game Boy. Growing up as we all did. Just be sure not to play it out in the sunlight or anywhere where you need any backlighting. The first run of that stuff, not realizing that you do need those things. But yeah, the thing I liked about Game Boy, and then I'll let you boys jump in with the offshoots and all that stuff, because I only had an original Game Boy. I ended up playing a lot of weird games on it more than the NES that I had an NES and the Super Nintendo by then. Like obviously I had Tetris. Super Mario Land is a weird game. I had that. Played this really weird football game. It was play action football, I believe it's called. And basically you were just little dots on a football field running around. And then playing some of the ports that came over, like Burger Time and stuff like that. Yeah, it was more that I think I might have played more with the Game Boy, but had less games, if that makes sense, in my arsenal for that. But yeah, the Game Boy, I probably got out of the Game Boy right around the time when the most popular Game Boy game ever was released, because I do not fall in that category for Pokemon. But yeah, so the Game Boy, while I probably wanted a color, just because I do want new hardware when it comes out and stuff like that. But yeah, I had the old green screen Game Boy, and about all my experience with that, and I wore those batteries out on that system.
I think that's a good segue to me.
Yeah.
So I am younger than you, and so my parents got divorced when I was 3, and so that meant that we had a console at my mom's house and a console at a different console at my dad's house, and so I didn't get to play a lot of I never got very far in any PlayStation or N64 games because I would have I couldn't play it on the weekends essentially. But so this solution to this is I got a Game Boy Color. That was the first one that I got. And when we were at Target to buy a Game Boy, we asked the guy what game should I get? I don't know what any of these are. And he looks at me and I'm a small child, and he's like, "You should get Pokemon. That's the game that you want." I don't even bother. I'm not even going to bother asking you what you're interested in. You should get Pokemon. And so then I played Pokemon, and then I loved that, and then got into, there are a lot of other Game Boy games that I have fond memories of and stuff. But it was my most played console at that time because it was easy to take with me everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you there. I got a Game Boy later on. I did not get it when it first came out. I got it. It was my console between NES and a PlayStation was the next console we had. So we had gotten the Game Boy in between there because we spent a lot of time traveling. Also, I have family that lives 6 to 7 to 10 hours out of the way. So we spent a lot of time in the car. So the Game Boy was perfect for that. And Pokemon was the perfect game for the Game Boy for that kind of trip because you could sink so much time into a Pokemon game, especially the original ones, because they made you do a lot of grinding. So it was definitely a time sink. I love the original versions though, and that was really it. It's interesting because there was kind of a lull there in the Game Boy until Pokemon came out. Then it again skyrocketed. It was the same thing as Tetris. Skyrocketed. Probably one of the most popular games ever released for the Game Boy, or the most popular. I don't know. Tetris may still have it, but that was definitely another peak for the Game Boy. And I think after that happened, Nintendo kind of got complacent. They didn't really do a whole lot with the Game Boy. They made it a little smaller. They gave it a color screen. Obviously, there were a few Game Boy Color only games, but there were also games that played on both, and they had different versions depending on what Game Boy you played on. If you played on a Color, if you played it on a regular Game Boy. Link's Awakening DX comes to mind. Any of those black cartridges you could play on a Game Boy Color, and it would have actual color palettes, or you could play it on regular Game Boy, and it would actually play. So that was interesting that they did that. But I do think they kind of got complacent because there was no real competitor. There was the Game Gear, but the Game Gear was basically a handheld master system that went through batteries quicker than anything I've ever touched in my entire life.
and there were six double A's required to run that Game Gear,
and it went through them in about an hour
or two. Yes, yes. Coming from your boy here, played World Series baseball on his Game Gear. So, needless to say, 1 or 2 games, new batteries, and so it was rough. But yeah, really in this time period, the rise of handheld games. Just a brief mention of the Game Gear is that literally it was like having a master system in your hands. So the quality was a little bit better than the Game Boy at the time in terms of graphics and colors and obviously all that stuff. But that meant it chewed through batteries. And then for some reason, Sega decided, we had one thing out there that chewed through batteries like crazy. Why don't we put the Sega Nomad out there that took Genesis cartridges and would go even more through batteries? I ended up not having a Nomad despite begging my parents for it. But thankfully,
the Nomad was one of those things that I had never seen until probably a few years ago. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it was a thing. Yeah,
I basically wanted to just play NHL 94, to be completely honest with you, to just be able to play that when we went on vacation and stuff, because I was so addicted to that game. But this generation had a bunch of handhelds. It's like, as we'll go on, this will probably be mostly where I tap out for a good portion of it. The rise of games had this. You had the Atari Jaguar, I think the Lynx.
The Atari Lynx, yeah. And there was the Turbo Express, which is like turbo graphics. And
kind of like what we're seeing now with, a whole bunch coming to market at the same time. And then it all seems to just sputter out after Game Boy gets the color and goes, oh, yeah, that's right. The Game Boy's a really good system. Now it has color. I don't need this other shit that burns through batteries. And then literally Nintendo gets their hand on it. And then we move into, that mid 2000s where the fall occurs.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where we get to the Game Boy Advance. We get to the 3 different versions of that came out with. At that time, there was nothing else. Sega had nothing.
Yeah, that's essentially what we mean by fall. Not so much the Game Boy Advance is an amazing system from.
Yes, I was going to say.
Yeah, we're not.
I was trying to figure out how to approach this, but still fight this whole narrative. Go ahead.
We're not saying the Game Boy Advance is bad. There's in no way, shape, or form the Game Boy Advance is bad. The Game Boy Advance has some incredible stuff on it. It's got all of the Castlevania games that I think are worth playing after Symphony of the Night. There's like 3 or 4 Pokemon games. It's a great system. And it does it very well. It took what the Game Boy Color did and just did it better, which is what everybody wanted.
Yeah, and essentially what I mean by fall here is the market itself. It was just Game Boy Advance and nothing.
Sure.
So, Nintendo had the monopoly on it. Not many people were doing, unless if you were a kid or kind of like in Jonathan's situation and Tom's situation of like traveling a bunch. Nobody was buying handhelds to just sit at home and play at this point because the home consoles have gotten so much better.
So I have the wiki page of best-selling consoles pulled up, and Game Boy Advance is significantly lower than the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, but they have. This is the thing I was saying before, where they have both of those combined, saying it was 118 million units. But I think that's cheating because that is covering 13 years of many different devices that people would have bought multiple Game Boys, or people would have bought a Game Boy and then bought a Game Boy Color later, or bought a Game Boy Pocket or a Game Boy Micro or whatever, because those are all very there are huge advantages to those later versions. So Game Boy Advance is at 81 million, which is 2/3 of that. And I feel like, to me, that indicates the Game Boy Advance was just as popular. It's just that people didn't buy as many duplicates. But since I'm already talking, so the Game Boy, I got the Game Boy Color, and I thought that thing was great. But then I got the Game Boy Advance, and I absolutely loved it. Because I think the Game Boy Advance, it was in the exact sweet spot where, so backing up, one of the things that I look for most in a handheld is games that are designed for that handheld. And so I think the Game Boy Advance is in the sweet spot where it is powerful enough that you can do like anything you want. Like you can do racing games, RPGs, action games, whatever, all kinds of stuff, platformers, and they all look great with much better art than you would have like in. I think it's at least equivalent to like the SNES, right?
Yeah, they said it was on par with the Super NES.
Yeah, and so like as long as it's pixel art, you can do whatever you want. It looks fantastic. But when you get more powerful than the Game Boy Advance, then you run into problems where people are like, well, I want my console games on my handheld. And then the problem is that like the situation you're in when you're playing handheld games, like you probably might be in a noisy environment or can't listen to music or like can't listen to the sound, or you are only playing for like short bursts of time, like 5 to 10 minutes or something like that. Or and also the device is smaller, harder to hold with fewer buttons. You can't do exactly the same thing as console games. With the GBA at the time, the Game Boy Advance SP was absolute favorite. I was like, this is the greatest device ever created. Now I think I would prefer Tom, when we were at your house, you had a Game Boy Advance and a Game Boy SP, and I think the SP is too small for me now as an adult. That the Game Boy Advance is a much better like form factor for holding as an adult.
I much prefer the original Game Boy Advance over the SP. I've actually gone and modified original Game Boy Advances so they have the same screen as the SP, so I can play with the nice screen on the better form factor.
Yeah, the big thing for people who don't know is the Game Boy Advance SP was backlit, so you could see the screen at all times,
which was like mind blowing at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
once we get, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm done.
Okay. So we get to the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance SP comes out, and here comes Sony with possibly one of the greatest handheld systems of all time with the PSP. It was incredible to see how powerful they could get a handheld at the time. It was essentially playing PS2 level games on a handheld. It had a really nice screen. It had a really nice layout, and Nintendo finally was challenged with a handheld device. And it was a great time to be a handheld gamer because you had all kinds of stuff like there were Metal Gear Solid, was a Peace Walker for the PSP. You had Kingdom Hearts games, you had Crisis Core, you had all kinds of games, and you could download PS1 games on your PSP. So this was unheard of. This was so much past the Game Boy Advance, it wasn't even funny. So Nintendo was forced to innovate, and this, I would say, is another rise in handheld gaming, where we got the DS, we got the PSP, and unfortunately at the time I was not really into handheld gaming at all, and I'm sad about it because if I had owned a PSP, I would have loved it, but I just didn't at the time. Like I was just not into having a handheld. But Mark, I don't know if you had either one, DS or PSP.
Not till later. I got my PSP. I bought it and confused the GameStop clerk because it was well after like the Vita might have even been discontinued when I went in and asked for it. I went in just to play classic PS1 games on there while I was going on a long road trip. So that's really my whole experience with the PSP is playing like Resident Evil 2 on a plane. And I think I had Final Fantasy 7 too as well. It was whatever I had downloaded for my PS3 because you could basically bring from your account onto that system.
Oh, that's right. It had remote play. How could I forget that? It had remote play for your PS3.
Yeah.
Unreal.
So yeah, it was that was basically the extent of it. The only thing memory wise PSP is that it was the first time I learned about the battery issue for those type of batteries where they would get real
swelling.
fat.
Yeah.
Because I found it, after not playing it for a year or so and had big fat battery on the back there. But yeah, that was my extent. I did not have it. I had a DS later, and the funniest thing about the DS I have, which I kind of can't find, is that I just bought it. I should have probably just bought a GBA because all I did was I got that DS off my cousin for real cheap, and then all I played was Link to the Past for the GBA version on that console. I don't even think I ever played a DS game on it, but. Yeah, this was that time period where I was strictly, I think I've said it on the podcast before, I was strictly in a lot of those games that are handheld or most games in general are just the things for nerds. And we played Madden and NCAA because, we're cool guys for a few years there, like late high school, early college, before I finally realized I was like, you know what? I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. I will play these nerdy games that I want to play. And not worry about looking cool. But yeah, this time period was definitely during that where I was trying to fit in, floating between, the jocks and the nerds in high school and just kind of trying to stay on the jocks good side. So I like Tom. I'm more on the flip side than Tom. Is I wish I was into handheld gaming at this point for the DS. More than the PSP, just because I have a lot of people that swear, there's a lot of really good DS games, and probably would have played the hell out of Ace Attorney and things like that when I was that age. But yeah, I feel even if we start talking into modding and stuff here, you two probably have better opinions of this time period.
I have so many things to say about these two systems. I'm sorry in advance for how long this is going to be.
No,
okay, so the first thing is I have to talk about my personal history with this stuff. All right. So I already told you, Game Boy Advance, I loved it. And then the Game Boy SP, even better. And then I didn't follow gaming news at the time. So we would just walk into the video game store and they would have new consoles and we'd be like, oh, hey, what's the new console? And so I remember we walked in and they're like, oh, we just got this, the new Game Boy in. It's the Nintendo DS. It's got 2 screens. The bottom one's a touch screen. I was like, that sounds terrible. I don't have any interest in that. I'm going to keep playing my Game Boy Advance. Where's the used Game Boy Advance games, please? And then in the PSP came out around the same time, but later, I think. Anyway, so I remember I walked into the game store and they had the PSP and they're like, yeah, Sony made a handheld. And I'm like, well, I know I've seen a lot of new handhelds come out that were obvious failures from the start. The Nokia N-Gage. I remember walking into the game store one week and they had a Nokia N-Gage as on the display. And I was like, this seems really stupid. And I'm not even going to bother trying this. And then the next week I went in, they didn't have a display model anymore.
Wasn't the N-Gage the one that had that really terrible Spider-Man game on it? It was
maybe.
Yeah, it was one of those, or was the N-Gage the one that was trying to be a phone too?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, then it was that. There's really bad tie-in with Spider-Man 3 or something, or whatever would have been the Spider-Man movie at the time.
Yeah.
That's just a really, really bad game.
So anyway, but the PSP came out and I was like, Sony is legit. They actually make video games. And so they had a PSP and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and get this and try it. This is going to be my successor to the Game Boy Advance. And I have a lot of conflicted feelings about the PSP. Because one, it is the number one example of the thing I was just saying the Game Boy Advance avoided, is once you get my problem with the PSP is a lot of games for the PSP are not designed as handheld games. By which I mean they took a PlayStation, the mechanics and whatever of a PlayStation game or PS2 game, but you don't have the triggers and you don't have a second analog stick. And so you can't just do that. you have to have different games that are designed for different controls and like a different form factor and stuff like that. And so I got the PSP, and I was looking through PSP games recently, and I think the game that I got at launch was Coded Arms, which was a first-person shooter. And
not good.
The thing to know about the PSP is that there were a lot of people who made first-person shooters for it. And obviously, you should never ever try to make a first-person shooter for the PSP because it is just going to be it feels so incredibly bad. I think I could only play for like 15 minutes at a time before my hands hurt too much. And this was as like a freshman a freshman in high school. Like I was young, I did not have hand problems. But now PSP is one of my favorite handhelds of the things that I have. It feels very nice in your hands, and it is extremely light. It's easy to stick in my pocket. And there are, like Mark was saying, there are a lot of really good games for the PSP. So I was curious about this the other day. Why is it that now I have a PSP that I love, and it is full of games that I think are great? But at the time when I bought a PSP, I thought it was terrible, and I could not find a single game that I was interested in. And so I looked through the release date, or like all of the PSP games by release date. And it's the thing about the PSP is that it's not until like at launch, there were racing games and sports games that were like well received and people liked them. And when people say, when I saw reviews about people liking their PSP at launch, it's because they played those games, which were good, and they worked well on the PSP, whatever. I'm not interested in those. There was not a game that I was interested in, like a genre I was interested in, that had decent reviews until 2 or 3 years after the PSP came out. And some of the games that are like most famous from there, like Danganronpa, came out in 2010, 5 years after the PSP came out. Because the Vita came out 7 years after the PSP. So that's like a long life. And as the life of the PSP went on, people got a better handle of how to design games for it. And so stuff like I know a lot of people are going to say I'm crazy for this, but Crisis Core and Birth by Sleep I think are really well designed for the PSP's control scheme. Also, as well as stuff like Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. Again, people are going to say I'm crazy because the whole claw thing. However, you get used to it.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem. Anyway, so that's, and I think another thing we need to mention is that the Nintendo DS sold almost twice as many copies as the PSP. And the number one reason for that is because of moms. Because this is before smartphones, and the thing that was different about the DS from other handhelds, including like the Game Boy Advance and whatever, is that there were a lot of games that were popular with moms, with adult women. Things like Style Savvy, Elite Beat Agents, and you mentioned Ace Attorney, other visual novels like that, as well
Brain
as
Age.
Nintendogs. Yeah.
Oh yes, Nintendo. Well,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Puzzle games, visual novels, rhythm games, things like that really stand out on the DS.
Mario Kart.
Right.
A Mario Kart where you could play multiplayer with someone else without them having to have the game.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, that's... I always say that Mario Kart is a system seller. That one just happened to be that much... Good guy Nintendo at the time, who doesn't exist anymore, would allow you to play Mario Kart with your friends, up to 4 people, I think. With like the DS would build its own wireless network, and you could all play Mario Kart together without having to have the game. Only one person had to have it.
Yeah, local multiplayer.
Yeah.
And thinking about who that use case is for, again, it's like moms. You buy one instance of this game, and then you buy a DS for like you and a couple and your kids, and or even just one copy of the game, and then a DS for the different kids. And that could even be like a used one or whatever, passing them along. And so, yeah.
I think the one thing to mention at the PSP, if I am correct, the crazy thing about it is that the PSP probably had the best version of a Persona game, because
Persona 3 Portable is definitely the best version of that game.
Yeah, and which is wild, you know, for the type of game that is. Which is why I'm slightly upset that the remake is leaning more towards the PS2 version.
So,
yeah.
Okay, I guess we'll talk about this.
Okay.
So the reason.
Let's not go too far off topic.
We'll do real fast.
This is on topic, sort of. So Persona 3 was on the PS2. Persona 3 Portable was a port of it for the PSP. The reason that people like Persona 3 Portable better is because, one, I think it has some quality of life changes, but the two major changes are, one, there's a female protagonist, and there are a lot of... So for people who don't mind playing as a male protagonist, the female protagonist has like slightly different lines and a slightly different story. So it's more content out of replaying the game. Also, you get to play as a girl, which a lot of people who play Persona want to be able to do, and they refuse to let you ever do that because the people in charge for a very long time are very misogynist. The other thing that I don't hear people talk about as much, but I think is huge, is that you don't walk around in P3P. In Persona 3, you have to walk through halls.
I was gonna say, yeah, you pick where you want to go, and it just gets you there, right?
Yeah, it shows you a map of the dorm, and you like move a cursor to choose where you want to go, which is stylized really well. It's like a gorgeous looking map, and it gives you a better sense of the like space. And also it cuts out a bunch of like bullshit walking down a boring hallway.
I was mostly, it was when I played through, I played the female side of the story, and I was kind of wishing they would give you that opportunity again. But yeah, what I loved about Portable was exactly what Jonathan said, the map, and it felt like a much better version of the game. When I played the original later, by accident mostly, because I kind of didn't realize they were two separate things. I thought I was confused when there was only a male character, but I think that was one of the good surprise things, and I think the PSP, in a sense, was more trying to be, I think, at times more than it could be, early on in its lifespan, and then by the time it figured out what it was, the technology was a little too old at that point, which is why I think the next one we're moving into, even though I never played it, I feel the PSP's long lifespan and not great reputation in terms of sales kind of hurt, the Vita, which may have been a better version of the PSP.
Sorry, I think one more thing we need to mention is that the PSP did not sell that well in the US. It was extremely popular in Japan. And so like there are a lot of games. It got a lot of love. It is a beloved system, just not necessarily in the US.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a much bigger system in Japan than it is in the US. But it still was pretty popular in the US, enough to give Nintendo a run for its money. And again, this is kind of where we're going to hit that downturn, because the Vita came out and it was a really interesting system. It should have been more popular, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't. I don't know if it was bad marketing.
It was bad.
They didn't have the right games. I mean, a lot of people will call that the JRPG machine, which is true. It is very JRPG heavy, but
it's so much more.
I know it. I agree. It should, like I said, it should have been way more popular than it was. And at the same time, Nintendo's releasing the 3DS, which, in all intents and purposes, was a bomb when it first came out.
I was gonna say it feels like dog shit in my hands. Go ahead.
It was so bad that they had to give people who bought it out of the gate like a discount because they cut the price so much after it wasn't selling. They had to give them a discount, and they also gave them, I forget how many games, but it was like a number of GBA games to download, which you could never download again. Like and if you have an ambassador system for a 3DS, those games were never released for the 3DS again after that, which is weird to me that they did that and then didn't do it again. But yeah, the 3DS was not good and the Vita was not selling. So this was like the next downturn of handheld gaming, because those were the only two things you had. It was and neither of them was a very good option at the time. The 3DS didn't have anything that actually played to the 3D very well. 3D didn't work very well to begin with. It was headache inducing. The screen was kind of shit. It wasn't great. It didn't feel good when you were holding, like Jonathan said, it feels like dog shit in your hands. I
have a lot to elaborate on with that and much nicer things to say about it, but yeah, I'll wait my turn.
Yeah, but to start, they did not do well. I have a Vita. I have an original OLED Vita. I love it. I bought it well after the fact, but I really enjoy it. I think it's one of the best ways to play. So it's actually it's a better PSP than the PSP personally. The way that the Vita scales PSP games on it is incredible. The OLED screen is so nice. I feel like it being bigger helped a little bit too. I feel like it helped the overall feel of the system. It was more comfortable. It had gimmicks that no one ever used with the stupid back touch panel.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you said it was more comfortable.
If you didn't have to worry about the back touch panel, it was more comfortable. But if you were playing a game that needed that, you had to like claw your hands up, and that did cause some problems.
Do you want to explain this for people?
Sure. So if you have a PS5 or you've seen a PS4 or PS5 controller that has the touchpad in the middle of the controller, it basically had that on the back of the Vita. It wasn't textured, but it was the same type of thing where games would use that for no apparent reason other than it was there, so they had to use it. Like, I think there was an Uncharted game that used it a ton.
For a lot of games, it's the L2 and R2.
Right. For PS1 games rather, and if you were remote playing your PS3 or PS4, it was the R2 and L2, which was also weird. But yeah, it was. I feel like the Vita was ahead of its time. People didn't know what to do with it, and the other thing that killed the Vita is Sony wanting to have its own storage and not use SD cards.
Yeah,
you were forced to buy this ridiculously expensive memory card that only went up to like 64 gigabytes, and people did not like that. While the 3DS was able to use standard SD cards, and it didn't have a problem with that. So, Jonathan, what are your thoughts on the Vita and the 3DS? Mark, I don't know if you had either of these things.
I had a 3DS.
Okay.
From like mid-life cycle.
So you had like the first revision of the console.
You guys will not guess which game I bought a special edition 3DS for.
Fire Emblem Awakening.
I wonder if it was Ocarina of Time.
Nope, it'd be Link Between Worlds.
Oh, well, it was one.
Okay.
The sequel to Link to the Past, guys.
That's right.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
That's a game I own and I've never played. I need to play it.
Yes, so I had that game. I had Mario Kart, again, system seller, as you say. And I think it's Mario Kart 7 for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so had a bunch of games like that. I think I bought some, because if I remember correctly, and again, I haven't played the 3DS since I've gotten the Switch. You could play DS games on there, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Because I think I got a bunch of the, like, when they pulled forward like the Super Mario Advance games. I got Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time for the DS. So whatever that was pulled forward, whether they were advanced versions or
Ocarina of Time was a 3D version for the 3DS.
Yeah.
But Mario 64 was the DS version, the standard DS.
Yeah, so I had those games because I went to GameStop and I picked up a whole bunch of games like that. Yeah, so I had those, and then I obviously used the 3DS shop to get all the classic games because you just give Nintendo $2 anytime they want it for those classic games. Because I didn't know about hacking 3DSs and things at the time because I was a good boy video game console owner at the time. So yeah, I had all those. Famously, even though now looking back, I am knowing what I know from going through speedrun tactics. The last time I really played my 3DS was on the plane back from John's wedding, where I beat Soda Pop for the first time ever in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Then I found the speedrun tactic for it and found out that essentially, if you know the tactic, he is a baby game for babies to beat in round one. So that is my last memory of the 3DS. It's essentially playing that game coming home from the wedding. But yeah, that was essentially, it became my classic Nintendo game cartridge. Outside of, like I said, Mario Kart and A Link Between Worlds. I just played a bunch of old games on there. But the cool thing I got out of it, because the 3DS had a bunch of cool accessories, is that I had a special edition Link to the Past with the Triforce and all on the top cover. And then I got the pouch that the Zelda the pouch that came with special pens and stuff for it. So yeah, it was like that was the first time I got into handheld for a long time. And then then the Switch came along and I didn't need it. And I don't travel where I'm not the driver, so didn't have much use for it much after that. But I did really like what I played at the 3DS, and it was probably the best handheld system that I've had.
Oh, you poor thing.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't do much in terms of handheld. So
yeah. Okay. So that's my lead in. I want to start again talking about my personal history with these things. So there was a big gap where I was not playing any handheld games because I was not interested in the DS and the PSP. I hated it. And so I kept playing Game Boy Advance games because there were a lot of games and they're great and I can just keep playing them. But then end of high school through college, I just didn't play any handheld games. I was primarily a PC gamer, and then I had my Xbox 360 in college. I'm sorry, again, yes, I was in college 2010 to 2013. I just had those. Didn't think about handheld games because I didn't have any travel or anything like that. I was always close to my dorm that I could go play video games if I wanted to. But 2013, I graduate college. I get a job. That job is the one I'm still in, and I had to do a good amount of travel, and never at any point, I'm still a little bit confused about this, why I never bought a portable game system to take with me on all those work trips. But part of it is, jumping forward, during lockdown, I heard a lot of people talking about how great the Vita is and you got to get a Vita because they were shutting down the store. And so I was trying to find one, but they're hard to find because everybody's trying to get them. And so I got a 3DS instead. And the 3DS that I got is an original 3DS that was previously owned by a literal child. And this is just the 3DS. And so it is designed for a child. It is not comfortable for me to hold as an adult. So that's why I was saying that it feels terrible. And I don't like to use it, really. I know a lot of people online who really, really like the 3DS, but all of them are either using a 3DS XL or a new 3DS or a new 2DS or something like that, one of the newer ones, which are much more ergonomic design and also designed to be used by an adult. The Vita, I finally got one. It is my second favorite handheld console after the Switch Lite. Switch Lite has 4 shoulder buttons, which basically automatically means it wins. The Switch Lite also, for anybody at home, the buttons are all much better than Joy-Cons. It's also way better to use than a Nintendo Switch. But so Vita, second favorite. and I really like this thing. Tom already mentioned a lot of the problems. The reason, so this is again like with the PSP. I really like it now, and so I was thinking, why did I not get this thing at the time? The Vita came out like in 2012 in North America, and I got that job where I was doing a lot of travel in 2013. Why did I not buy a Vita, which at the time, which I now know had a lot of games that I am interested in. And so I was thinking about this, and I talked to other people online. So I distinctly remember hearing about the Vita when I was in 2013, like in the apartment I was in at the time, when I had started that job. And what I remember, literally the only thing I heard about the Vita is PlayStation has released a new handheld. You can use it to play PlayStation 3 games, like to stream PlayStation 3 games to it, remote play. And I thought, that's really stupid. There's no way it works. And I cannot imagine any use case for, I am in my home. I want to play a game on my console, but I don't want to play in front of or like where my console is set up. But I am still going to be extremely close to the router, and my console is also extremely close to the router. Why? Who is that for? I don't get it.
Many people are asking that same question today.
Yeah, well, the thing is, now we have 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and so like it works. Like you can do that, and there is very little latency if your phone or whatever is a good Wi-Fi connection to your router, and then you can just plug in your console. It's done that with my Xbox, and it's fine. Yeah,
it's much better now. I've done it with my PS5 and so now it's much better. But at the time, you're right. I don't know who that was for. I don't know. I don't know who had good enough internet that they could do that.
The answer is literally no one, because it's 2.4 gigs Wi-Fi. And if you're like, the use case for this is you can be laying in bed and play a game without having to move your console or whatever, right? And no one in the world is ever going to have a good enough Wi-Fi setup in order for that to work with 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, unless you are playing a game that allows for like 1 or 2 seconds of lag and you're fine. Anyway,
you got to be playing a turn-based RPG for that.
Yeah. So anyway, what they should have marketed as instead, the thing they should have told people is, you can literally play PlayStation 3 and 4 games on your Vita. Literally the same game, and it has cross-save.
Right. They didn't tell anybody that. They forgot to mention that.
Yeah. Yeah. If I buy Tokaiden 2, I can play on the Vita. That is literally the same game that is on PS4 and PC. And it has cross-save. So I can be playing the game on my console at home, and then move that save to my Vita, take the Vita with me on the trip, continue playing where I was. I come back, I switch back to the console. This idea may seem familiar to you if you have heard of the Nintendo Switch, the console that was extremely successful because you can do exactly this thing.
Yep.
But PlayStation didn't tell anybody. And the other thing is, expanding on what you said, Tom, you were saying that the memory cards are really expensive. The other thing is that the whole Vita itself is extremely expensive. It launched with an OLED screen, and so it was like what, $350? It is as much as a full-size video game console.
Yeah, it was not cheap. Not cheap at all.
But if you had marketed as, it is literally playing the exact same games, then people are like, okay, I see why. Especially because of stuff like it has an OLED screen. However, instead, what they were saying is like, and buy our special memory card that is very small and extremely expensive for no reason. Well, the reason is fuck you. That's why.
Yep. The reason is we're Sony. We can do whatever the hell we want.
And so another thing is, we were talking about the PSP. It was more popular in Japan than the US. And I don't remember if it was Tom or Mark that was saying, but it was still like well liked in the US. And there's a lot of popular games here. Not the case for the Vita. The Vita was very successful in Japan. And one of my main complaints about the Vita, like that I have now, is that so many of the games that I want to play were only released in Japan, and they just never bothered localizing them. The thing that makes this extra aggravating is it will be a game where it is the same game that is available on the Vita and PS4, and it has cross-save, as I mentioned. They released the PS4 version in the US and in Japan, but the Vita version only in Japan. And so I have to get a translation patch to take the script from the PS4 version and apply it to the Vita version, because they didn't do the work of selling the game that they had already made and translated, because that's how poorly the Vita sold in the US.
They tried. I mean, they even came out with a second version that was cheaper, that didn't have the OLED screen, and it just didn't work. They did not know how to market it to the US.
The other thing is the back pedals, like you were talking about. I know those are like a big thing for Gravity Rush, and you mentioned Uncharted, the like big launch games.
Yeah.
First party launch games. And I was, as you were talking about that, I was holding my Vita in my hands, trying to figure out how do they expect you to hold these, to hold the thing and tap those back buttons.
Yeah, I don't know.
And you can't. You cannot do it. There is no comfortable way to do it. If you have you have to have your hands off of those pads, which means that you have to have an uncomfortable hold on the console. That's not very solid. And then you also have to move your fingers, and I don't know how you would smoothly move your fingers to hit those triggers quickly.
Yeah, they did not think that one through. That's
so.
For sure.
For every other game that is not those that we just mentioned, they simply don't expect you to have L2 and R2, and the game is designed around that, and it's fine. And what is it? Oh, Tokaiden 2 that I mentioned, which I know nobody else in the world cares about except for me, was a cross save with PS4. PS4 version obviously uses L2 and R2. They have different controls on the Vita, so that you tap the bottom right of the actual screen itself, because that is a touchscreen, to do those actions. And so like that is a very comfortable thing to do, that feels natural, because you're barely moving your thumb in order to do that. But that's not how they marketed it. They marketed it as here's these impossible to use controls that will feel terrible. So
yep. Yeah, I went so far as to buy a grip that had R2 and L2 buttons that literally just touch the touchpad for you. That's all it does.
Interesting.
Because I think Hori made one, and a bunch of people cloned it, and I bought one just to have R2 and L2, and so I didn't have to physically figure out where I had to touch on the dumb Vita. But anyway, moving on. This was the dark days of handheld gaming until we had like decent Pokemon games on the 3DS. Even then, the 3DS was the only thing that was selling. You had a Mario Kart game, again, system seller, and then all of a sudden Nintendo decides we're going to put out something that's handheld and dockable to play at home. And I think this is really, obviously we're talking about the Nintendo Switch, but I think this is really where people saw that you could sell a handheld device that played, either PC games or cut down slightly console games from this generation. And I think everybody's mind was just blown, and everybody thought, man, we could totally do that. We could do it better. We could just, there's so many devices. So, and I think that the biggest thing now is that Valve took this idea and said, we tried to make our own console once. It didn't work. It wasn't powerful enough to be a living room console. Let's try that in a handheld, because it doesn't have to be super powerful. It only needs to be 720p or 800p or whatever it is. And you can make it dockable if you really want to play it on your TV. And once the Steam Deck came out, the floodgates opened, I feel like. Jonathan, you have a Steam Deck, correct?
Yeah. Okay. Steam Deck is tied for my second favorite handheld.
Yeah. And just the fact that after the Steam Deck came out, big companies, not just like random Chinese companies making computer handhelds, which there are a ton of those, which shows that they are selling, because they wouldn't keep making them if they weren't selling. But companies like Asus, companies like Lenovo are coming out with handheld PCs. That tells me that this is a huge market and nobody realized how big it is. I think I think once the pandemic hit and people realized that they may be stuck inside their house and not everybody wants to watch the same thing on TV, that, you know, I can go in my bedroom, I can go in the living room, I can go anywhere and still be able to play a standard console style game or a PC game that, you know, will run on less powerful hardware. I can go take that anywhere I want and play it. And this is on top of the people who would normally buy something like this to travel and things like that.
So I think I actually want to push back on this narrative when you're done, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just going to say that, you know, I feel like everybody has their own screen in their hand now anyway with a phone. So having this device in their hand wasn't that different. And it was portable and powerful. And you could, like I said, you could take it traveling. You could do whatever you wanted with it. And you can stream from a more powerful PC in your house if you need to, which is another thing. But yeah, I think that they finally figured out how to market this thing and how, now that people understand how to use it, I feel like that's why we're seeing it. So many people come out with their own versions.
Okay. I'm sorry, but I don't think the Steam Deck, like, competitors, knockoffs, whatever you want to call them, the Asus stuff matters at all, because I never hear about anybody buying them. And the reason is because all of those are too expensive, because Valve is taking a loss on the Steam Deck and no one else can do that because they aren't Valve, who makes money hand over fist from Steam, the store.
Yeah.
And also because, well, right. So nobody is ever going to buy any of those Asus handhelds in big numbers or whatever, because one, what I just said, they're too expensive. They're like $1,000 when you can get a Steam Deck I got mine for $420, $420. And the other reason is because Valve puts a lot of work into making games Steam Deck verified. Like, they push out a lot of patches to do updates for specific games to fix things and make them run better. And also, because the Steam Deck is popular enough, it's now a target platform for a lot of PC developers. They will specifically do testing with a Steam Deck to make sure that their game runs on it. They don't do that for the Asus, and Asus is not going to do that level of work, and they can't take that kind of a hit. Those things don't matter. Instead, but I do agree that now is a very big time for handhelds that are not from the major video game manufacturers, any of the devices that we just talked about. Instead, I think the big things to look at are like the Analog Pocket, Analog Pocket, and then the Retroid devices, and the Miu Mini Plus, which are all devices that are shaped like the handheld consoles that we've talked about before, but they run and generally run Android, and the idea is that they run a bunch of emulators. So you can play any Game Boy Advance, PSP, Super Nintendo, whatever games like that. I think the Retroid Pocket 3 can play through GameCube games.
I know some of them are getting powerful enough to run GameCube.
Yeah. And the Analog Pocket is also FPGA, the same technology that the Mister uses, so that it is not emulation, and you can actually put your Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges into the Analog Pocket, and it runs them because it is exactly mimicking the Game Boy hardware to not use emulation and run it accurately and everything. I think these devices are the things to watch, because that Retroid Pocket 3 that we were just talking about, that can run PS2 and GameCube games, costs $165. That is the brand new top of the line model that has Hall effect joysticks, the thing that means that it will never get joystick drift ever. The Miu Mini, I saw a bunch of people talking today that there's a Black Friday sale that you can get it for $65 if you trust a less, $65.
That's pretty impressive
for a very well liked handheld that's been around for a while. And if you trust a less reputable store, then you can get it for $35. That is a thing that people will absolutely get, because it is cheap. It is accessible. You have a very large library of games to play from or to play, and a lot of things to choose from. I think I was just Googling release dates for those things. It looks like most of those started in like 2020 or 2019. So I agree with you, Tom, that there is something happening like right now in recent years where these devices are suddenly becoming much more popular. I think in that like handheld gaming is on the rise, but I think these are the devices that people are more interested in because all the stuff I just said. I think the reason, but then now my speculation, I think the reason that this is happening now is not so much lockdown as it is because we didn't talk about the biggest handheld device throughout all of this time period, which is the smartphone. iPhone comes out in 2008. If early in the first few years of the iPhone, there were a lot of very interesting, very good, well-liked games for it. Things that are like really interested in the challenge of designing around touch controls and exploring what you can do with that interface versus having a controller or whatever. And also people are really interested in this because non-smartphones before that had like Tetris. I remember one friend playing Icewind Dale on their non-smart cell phone, that you could play like really simple games like that. But the iPhone is way more powerful. The App Store is huge. There's a lot more developers specifically doing work on that. You're not limited to what's bundled with your phone from the cell phone or network provider or whatever. But then after like many years into the cell phone market, we get all of the games that people complain about. Like they have extremely intrusive ads and they are extremely, I can't think of the word, but bad monetization schemes. Exploitative is the word I was looking for.
Yep.
Exploitative monetization schemes. And a lot of the time in the like mid 2010s, people are willing to overlook that because like you are still playing the game that you like or whatever. But now with like gacha games being so prevalent, that like exploitive monetization is so obvious and pervasive that you can't just like play a game on your phone. They all have like login rewards and battle passes that you have to buy, and you have to do a lot of and there's cottage industries of how to like best spend your money if you are going to spend money, or how to avoid spending money, or all the hidden mechanics that you need to know in order to be able to play the game without having spent any money, and stuff like that. All of the extremely annoying ads that turn people off of a game before they even heard the like the instant that they hear that it exists. And also because the like app stores are really, really, really bad. The search function is really bad. Fun fact, one of my first girlfriend in high school worked for Google and said she was involved in the App Store redesign. And I was like, and so I think about her every single time I go to the like Google Play Store and can't find anything because the search is so bad. Anyway, I think that a lot of people are really tired of that mobile game market. And that is why they're like, you know what? I want to play a Game Boy game. You know what had good handheld games? The Game Boy.
Yeah.
And so that's where the Retro Pocket, Analog Pocket, it's Miu, Mini Plus, all that stuff comes in. And yeah, that's it.
I agree with you. I think people want something where they're not going to get served an ad, and they want to play the games they want to play. And it helps that it's nostalgia talking too, playing, games that we all had when we were kids on those devices. And even the Steam Deck you can set up with emulators and stuff, and the Switch has Switch Online, and so I agree with you. I think we're hitting a point where everybody can play their games from their childhood on their handhelds or their phones or whatever, and it's certainly helping the market. I agree with that. Mark, any thoughts on the Switch or the Steam Deck and any of that good stuff?
No, I just love the conversation here. I agree 100% with the Switch has outside of a few games here and there has become, when I go to it, I end up playing, the retro games and stuff on there. Maybe that's just, it seems to be a pattern with me in terms of these handhelds. But yeah, I'm not going back and playing any Switch games that I have beaten or anything like that, like for replayability in that sense. The one funny story I have is when I was, on vacation and had my Switch, I for some reason played I think it's the Super Nintendo, has a pool game, as in billiards, that I played for 3 hours to keep trying to get past the third level. For no, I don't know why. I had Pokemon at the time, and I had all these other games that I could have been playing. Unlocking characters in Smash Brothers, anything but the billiards game for the Super Nintendo Online. But yeah, I think the best part about the Switch is it finally gives me an option for portable travel device that has games on it that I want to play. That was the one downside after I beat Link to the Past. Link Between Worlds. On the 3DS is really, it was just the retro stuff would be the only reason I'd play anything 3DS when I took it around. So I think this generation of stuff is giving people a lot more opportunity to, as you mentioned, play the retro games, whether they want to do it original hardware, or they want to do, a bunch of emulator stuff, or, it gives them the opportunity with really good hardware to be able to do that. And I think that's the main reason why we're seeing a renaissance in it, is that the choices out there give you a lot of variety and don't force you into one type of handheld thing. And I think it's very much like you see in the console market a little bit, is that I think we've gotten to a nice groove where each one of the consoles involved gives you a little something different, so that you would have a reason to, continue with it until the end of the life cycle and not just shelve it away. And I can't wait to see what the improvement is on the Switch. I just really hope Nintendo doesn't do the thing where they go completely off track, because I think this half handheld, half home system is probably the wave of the future here. And I hope they continue and just improve it rather than trying some new gimmick.
No, I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere.
I'm sorry, I have one last hot take.
Yeah,
sure.
The Switch is the successor to the PSP and the Vita, not the 3DS.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Guess a thing we didn't mention, Tom, is you have your PSP docked into your TV.
Yep, I have it set up as a micro console.
Yeah,
I have a PSP Go that I set up with a dock, because you can use a PS3 DualShock with it to play PSP and PS1 games.
Yeah,
and it can just hook up to my TV.
And it can just natively output video to component cables or whatever.
Yep.
You just get a cord, and then you can plug your PSP into your TV.
It was the Switch before the Switch.
Yeah.
You're 100% right.
And then
I totally
also,
forgot about it.
Yeah, and then the Vita, like I was saying, the really cool thing about it is the cross save. It's better than cross save is not having to have two consoles and doing the exact same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent conversation, gentlemen. I appreciate the insight. It's not we don't usually get this deep on Game Vault Pod, but I'm glad we went deep on this topic, because people should know that it wasn't always this good.
Yeah, and we'll be moving on to our Retro Roulette.
All right. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. It was a great discussion on handheld games there. Wish I had a little more experience with them to contribute there, but it was nice to hear you guys talk about it. So let's bring Jen back in for our very good and not frustrating at all Retro Roulette game this week. Dr. Mario for the NES. Let's start with Jen's opinion, since we saw Tom and me play it on Extra Life. But yeah, haven't heard what she thought about it yet.
Yeah. So I had never played this game and did not know what to expect whatsoever. So I actually played it on the Switch because they have, like the old NES games on there. And when the game booted up, I have never played this before. Like I said, I don't know if Dan had played it on my Switch at one point and didn't mention it, but I started off on the highest level at the fastest speed. And with the frantic music, I was like, what is happening? So I paused it. I just let myself lose. And then when it went to restart, it lets you set the levels and everything. So I was like, okay, what psychopath was playing this on my Switch? So probably Dan. But I went to level 0 and I set it to the slowest speed, obviously. And then I did calm music. So it was still a pain in the ass. Going into it, I thought it was just Tetris. And I saw those little, I know they're viruses now, but I saw the little viruses and I was like, oh, they're probably just, blocking you to make it more difficult, whatever. I didn't realize until I asked you guys, please, for the love of God, help me figure this out. I didn't realize that you had to remove the viruses by lining up the different colored blocks with them and removing them that way. So I was playing the game for a long time and I was getting pretty decent at lining up the colors the way I wanted to. And you have to line up, at least 4 and then you remove them. But I'm like, why am I not like progressing to the next level? Like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And that's when you guys stepped in and said you had to actually remove the viruses. Yeah. And then that just put a whole nother level of difficulty on it for me, or in it for me, because I couldn't, like, my brain, and I'll blame it on baby brain, but my brain just couldn't compute. Like, not only do you have to hardcore strategize, like, in the little bit of time you have while these blocks are falling, where I'm going to put the blocks, but you're also trying to work them up to the viruses so you could knock them out. And so many times I like double clicked by accident and switched the colors at the last second and messed myself up. And it was so frustrating. And Dan came home from work and he's like, what are you playing? So I was like, oh, Dr. Mario. And he's like, isn't that like a baby game? I was like, no, it is not a baby game. It is a very difficult game.
Well, he was playing it at 9 at the highest speed, so maybe it was a baby game.
Yeah, I mean, geez. He might be the Dr. Mario prodigy. We probably should have had him on, but it was I didn't beat it. I didn't even beat level 0, which is really offensive. And I'm probably going to keep trying for a little while, but this game I'm not going to say it was unfun because it was funny, I guess. So I was kind of enjoying it in that aspect because I was doing so badly. But I am genuinely curious if you guys even beat any levels and like what you think. I know overall, I heard when I walked into Extra Life how quote unquote fun it was from when you guys played, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say about it as well.
Well, let's just say it's not fun to watch because
probably not. Yeah.
The music is very grating after a while.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the first Retro Roulette game in a long time that I can remember that we're knocking points off for music because it was not good. But yeah, it took me a little while to figure out what I was doing on stream the first go around, but I ended up getting better at it as I went. Once I figured out, there's definitely a way you need to set things up.
Mm-hmm.
And I also turned down the speed. I turned down the difficulty to the lowest one, or else I was having some big issues in the beginning because I was trying to watch chat. I'm making excuses here. Trying to watch chat, play the game, and talk to Mark at the same time, and it was difficult. But there was a point where I got in in a groove, and I was doing pretty well. I will say though, the 2-player mode has some Mario Kart bullshit going on.
Oh no!
Because when we were playing on Extra Life, I was on a harder difficulty than Mark, and I beat there. You have to get it's best out of 5. First to 3 wins.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 wins. Mark had 0. All of a sudden, I wasn't getting any of the pills I needed.
Oh.
And Mark won 2 in a row, and then Mark won the 3rd one in a row.
Damn.
It came back from a 2-0 deficit.
I just Dr. Mario sharked him. That's all.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yes, it's a good game. I mean, it's a very good puzzle game. If you're into puzzle games and you can just listen to some other music while you're playing,
Sure. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Or if you're some kind of psychopath and can play it with no music.
Yes.
That is an option, right?
Complete
no music.
silence.
That is an option. You can turn the music all the way off. Yes.
I feel like the people who can do like 15 Rubik's cubes at once, that person would be like, no music, I got this. Like,
yeah.
Not me, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
As Tom said, the one thing I feel that the game at like the next level of game, what's called like Super Nintendo or N64 ones, just kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Or passive.
No, having more colors and sprites to it probably would make this game better and a better sound chip and all that stuff, more than just the game mechanics itself. Because the game mechanics are great in this, in terms of the needing to eliminate the viruses and needing to match 4 and trying to figure out the strategy in that, and all the little small places you can sort of slip a pill in to real quick, like those people that are really good at Tetris can do. I think that's really the only thing wrong with this game is just the NES sound chip. Essentially, I feel that at a higher level of hardware, I feel like this kind of game gets better. Kind of like how Tetris got better. As they Tetris Effect being one of the great examples of using more better sound, better visuals to make a game even better. While keeping the same mechanics.
I will argue that Tetris had better music to begin with.
Yeah,
the song was way better.
Well, the Tetris Effect stuff. Well, Tetris is better than Dr. Mario originally for matching the originals. Yes, 100%. I'm
just talking music. Music, period. That's an earworm. The Tetris song.
Yeah, and they did a great job with the chip they had for that. Which means that the Dr. Mario people were just lazy or thought this music was good. Don't know which it is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The 3 different songs, none of them were very good.
Yeah.
So when did the other 2 songs come in? Like, what level do you have to be?
You can change them anytime.
The frantic. Wait, it was frantic, calm, and something else, right?
It's frantic, chill, and
chill. That's right.
I forget what the other one was.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I heard 2, I guess, out of the 3 then. I don't remember frantic because I was like freaking out the whole time.
None of them were very good, but I made it a point to change it after some. I think either Vince or Jonathan were saying that the music was horrendous, so I changed it.
I believe the first one that I brought up was Maiden.
Oh, Maiden. That's
Probably.
right. Maiden said it was bad.
Yeah. I think Jonathan just said, "Okay, guys, I can't take this anymore. I'm out." Which I don't blame any of the viewers for doing.
Which is why we were getting shit when we were playing it on Extra Life. Like, this is the game you decided to play.
Yeah.
It's a punishment for everyone else instead of our wheel of what do we call it? The wheel of misfortune.
Yeah, I mean, well, it wasn't the worst game we've chosen to lead off.
It's a better name than it actually was.
Yeah.
The Wheel of Consequences.
The Wheel of Consequences.
The Wheel of Misfortune better, though.
I almost said the Wheel of the Worst, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah. So, let's get to our scores. We'll start with Jen.
I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5, and I'm not sorry.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jen
I don't know.
Really didn't like this one, huh?
No, I didn't. I want this to be a baby game for babies where, like, you can... This is going to be ridiculous of me to say, and I'm sorry. But I would like a baby mode until I figure out how to get the stupid viruses to go away consistently. Where, you know how, like, the blocks, they drop down at a certain speed? I want them to stay frozen, and I drop them down.
Jen, that's called the pause button.
I know. But when you pause this game, the screen goes black.
Oh, does it?
So I can't even plan. At least on the Switch port, I can't even plan my moves. So I want a baby game for babies. And then I'll play it on chill at the slowest. But until I get to that point, no thank you.
Fair.
All right. Tom.
I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5.
Oh, snap.
It's I don't know. I think this is a very good puzzle game. They did a really good job with taking something like Tetris or Puyo Puyo and putting their own spin on it. And the only reason it's not any higher than a 4 is because the music is horrendous. And there's only 3 options, and none of them are good. So that's why I'm going 4 out of 5.
Yeah. So mine is 3 out of 5, and for the same exact reasons as Tom. The music is what knocks it down for me. I had fun playing it with Tom. I had fun playing it, when I did it on my own. Just the complete strategy. It is the kind of game that if you want to keep, progressing, getting better at it, it's the perfect game that you can play while listening to a podcast or watching another video on a separate screen or something, because there's nothing sound wise that you need to play it.
That's true.
So it works. It works fine in that respect. You don't have to listen to the music, but also maybe it's just me that I need some kind of stimuli going on while, whether it's a game or something else, if I have the sound off on my game. But yeah, so 3 out of 5 just because of the music, essentially. I would love to play. This is the only Dr. Mario I've ever played, even because I played it, before we got it for Retro Roulette here. I'd be interested to try the other ones to see if my theory about having a better sound chip and more colors to choose from improves the quality of the game. So hopefully we don't get another one of these next week. Not so much that it's a bad game.
You asked for this. You asked for one of the new Nintendo games, and you got it.
I did fuck around and found out. So
yeah, thanks, Mark.
Not so much that the game was terrible, it wasn't a great Retro Roulette stream game. So without further ado, Tom, why don't you spin that wheel? And Tom, I think God is forsaking me from my time of praying for NES games, because we got another one, and some would say that this character essentially killed the pizza brand for a decade or more.
I would agree with that.
Why don't you introduce our game for tonight?
We are playing Yo Noid for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And for all of you under the age of 30, Noid was the mascot for Domino's.
Yes. And if I remember correctly from this game, I think there is a weird rock, paper, scissors game at some point that occurs between levels or something. I have not played this in a long time.
I don't know. I don't know that I've ever played this game before.
Yeah.
I sure haven't.
Yeah. This was part of the collection of my cousin who had a whole bunch of NES games that I wish I could find. That this was one of them in there. It's also how I found that Bugs Bunny game that I think you have now. That I love so much. That's an awful, awful game. But this one definitely has weird things in it. The Noid is a weird character. And like I said, it destroyed a pizza brand for a decade.
The Noid is such a weird thing because I think he was a bad guy.
Yeah, he's like the Hamburglar.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. He
was the pizza version of the Hamburglar, but he was just
trying to steal your pizza.
Oh boy.
Yeah, except it just didn't work.
Yeah.
He didn't have a hamburger today. What was the whole thing? Like pay you on Tuesday or something like that? The hamburgers, they're saying or whatever.
It was a weird thing.
Yeah, so we're gonna be playing Yo Noid. I believe it is a side-scrolling platformer.
It is. So you're gonna have some fun, Mark.
Yeah, I'll play it this week. But yeah, this is hopefully at some point maybe we can run through mascot games even if they're not on your wheel. At some point play Cool Spot,
sure.
The 7-Up mascot game, which had a version of Othello in it at some point.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for donating to the Extra Life. We've already done that. Remember, you can go to tinyurl.com/GVP Extra Life. That's tinyurl.com/GVP Extra Life. You can donate through the end of the year, December 31st. Hopefully, we've hit our 750 goal. If not, throw us a few bucks and help out. And we'll be back tonight with Yo Noid. And then, depending on how this week goes, may or may not have a stream from me, as I like to do some streams during, holiday weekends if I don't have plans. So just be on the lookout for Friday, most likely, for anything. So thank you again for listening. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.